What? What do you want?
Hi, I'm new here. Hello. Oh, hey, are you new here?
Well, no, I've been kind of coming here for 8 years, so, but nice to see you again, Becky.
Oh, that's right.
Hey, what up, Keisha?
It's Selena.
You know what I mean. That's what I said, So how you doing, Cecilia?
Doing good, Rodney.
What's up? My name is Christian and I serve as the lead pastor of Redeem Christian Church. Thanks for joining us today and this month. We're going to be starting a new series talking about the vision of Redeem. And what is our vision? To create communities where people are welcome, known, loved, and get to go to the next step of being grown in Christ. But this month we want to dive into a deeper explanation of what each of these points mean, starting with today and looking at what welcoming means to us as a church. Now, for us, welcoming people means that from the second they walk into our doors, they're welcome. They feel like family. And that comes for us out of Matthew 25:34 through 40. I'm going to read it for you real quick. It says this: "Then the king will say to those on his right, 'Come, you who are blessed by my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me food. I was thirsty, and you gave me drink. I was a stranger, and you welcomed me. I was naked, and you clothed me, and I was sick, and you visited me. I was in prison, and you came to me.' Then the righteous will answer him, saying, 'Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you drink? And when did we see you a stranger and welcome you, or naked and clothe you? And when did we see you sick or in prison and visit you?' And the king will answer them, 'Truly, I say to you, as you did it to one of the least of these, my brothers, you did it to me.'" See, these verses hit it right on the head. And it reminds us, not just as a church, but also as believers, a few things that I want to discuss today. The first being that as believers, we are expected to welcome the least of these without judgment. And I think that can be hard for many of us, as it's just what we do in this life. We love to judge people. But this means that it doesn't matter what people look like, where they've come from, what they sound like, what they smell like, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. For us as believers, as Christians, our call is to just love them, welcome them, no matter where they've come from. It's not our call or our right to judge people who have yet to come into a relationship with Christ. This is 100% wrong. We don't know what people have gone through, and we don't know what people have lived through. And that's why for us in a church setting, it's very important that we welcome anyone that we see, no matter where they come from. I think many of us, if we're honest, have lived our lives under this thought process of God helps those who helps themselves. And so for many of us, our radar has been kind of shifted by this thought process. And it's an okay thought process, but can I tell you, it's not actually biblical. It was actually coined by an English political theorist named Algernon Sidney, and then later on made even more popular by Benjamin Franklin in his almanac. This then turned it into something that we have not only begun to just say and do throughout our culture, but we truly believe that this is truth, that God helps those who helps themselves. But the truth is, God helps us all. It doesn't matter if you helped yourself or you didn't help yourself. As a matter of fact, more often than not, God knows that we can't help ourselves. We can only do it through the power of the Spirit. So this thought process has kind of disillusioned us to welcoming the people in the way that God has called us to welcome them. And this thought process contradicts the very message that we read in Matthew 25, which told us to welcome the least of these. The second thing that I noticed from these verses, and that has inspired us, is that looking at people like they were Jesus would cause us to have a better way of welcoming them into our churches, into our lives, into our networks that God has placed us in. And now, think about that thought process. If you were to look at someone like you looked at Jesus and welcome them. This is what Jesus was saying here when he was talking. He said, "Truly I say to you, as you did it to one of the least of these, my brothers, you did it to me." So he's not saying that we actually physically did, fed Jesus, came to him when he was a prisoner or anything like that. But what he's saying is that as we love other people well, as we welcome them well, as we feed them well, as we do all of these things to make people feel welcomed in our house, in our areas of influence, in our church itself, then we are doing it as if we did it to Christ. And I think if we wrapped our minds around that thought process and began to treat others and welcome others in the way that God has orchestrated it and asked us to do so, and move away from this thought process of God helps those who help themselves, and begin to look at people as if we were loving Jesus. My prayer for you today and my challenge is that you would go out and welcome people as Jesus welcomed you. I remember myself, there was a time where I didn't feel like I deserved at all to step foot in a church. And I remember the anxiety that was going through my heart the day I stepped out of a prison cell and went back to church and went to my youth pastor. And I'm like, "Hey man, God has called me in ministry. I don't know how I'm going to do this. Look at my life. Look at what I've done." And I remember that my youth pastor looked at me with love in his eyes. And I can imagine for him that he was looking at me as if he was welcoming, as if he was serving Jesus Christ. And I'm not saying at all that any of us, not myself included, are Jesus. But Donald had this thought process to stare at me and to love me as if he was doing it for the least of these. Because he knew that this is how God had called him, us, to welcome people into the church and into his life. So for me, it caused so much growth when I was welcomed with the love of Christ. So I challenge you to do the same today. I challenge you to do the same this week and every other day moving forward, to welcome people as if you were welcoming Christ. Be blessed, and I'll see y'all next week where we're going to talk about being known.